Early in the evening around 8 p.m. 10 mg of 4-HO-MiPT, miprocin, was ingested. I began to feel effects of the miprocin within about 15 to 20 minutes. It was a bit subtle and uplifting with a hint of warm euphoria. At this dose it was nothing profound or too intense. At this dose of 10 mg miprocin within 40 minutes things were a bit more vivid and I was definitely in carefree state. I felt very happy and lucid. There was a slight hint of warm euphoria that seemed to have reached its peak within that time. After about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes after ingesting the 10 mg of miprocin, 4-HO-MiPT, I took another 15 mg. Once again I felt the effects come up quite quickly. I could feel the peak blending together with the first dose that I took. It wasn't overwhelming and just felt like it was gradually climbing into a more vivid warm mental and tactile state. Things were beginning to breathe as well as cast tracers and after images of things in motion. At this point I decided to consume another 10 mg. I then left. I went to a rave. At the rave I was in an empathetic warm state that felt as if it was philosophically connected to my emotional intelligence and those around me. I felt very sensitive to the sound as well as the visuals and people around me. Everything seemed very joyful and interconnected in a zen-like serene way. The visual realm was saturated with tracers that would change as shades of colors and glisten softly. Everything looked really beautiful as if it was flowing in one connected form. After about 2 hours of being at the rave I decided to take another 10 mg capsule that I had pre-weighed. Within the next hour things were a bit confusing but not uncomfortable at all. It was like the psychedelic funhouse had opened up and everything was just a really good time. Things looked pretty wonky and colorful. Every motion flowed into a tracer of itself which would create images of flowers and things like that would follow it behind. It was pretty interesting to watch this happen. Even as this was going on I felt very lucid and articulate. I was able to function and talk with strangers around me. After about 2 or 3 hours of consuming my last amount at the rave I decided to get an Uber home as the show was about to end. When I got home I decided to take another 25 mg of miprocin, 4-HO-MiPT. I was still definitely on the good side of the effects from my last dose and the synergy effect of all the doses before when I decided to take this last dose of 25 mg. Within about 20 minutes my mind and body felt a very intense shift in the potency of the experience of what I was already having. I decided to lay down in my bed as I felt this come up and peak was hitting much harder than the others throughout the night. Within 45 minutes after consuming the last 25 mg of miprocin, 4-HO-MiPT, I felt as if I was in a deep mental shibari mind trick with my inner self being bounded and tied up by geometric strands of shapes and colors that wrapped around my essence in a gymnastic flow of infinite wisdom that felt as a feminine energy was teaching lessons of a newer realm. She forced me to surrender to her like a psychedelic dominatrix as she translated messages of love and affection through her gymnastic strands of energy that had force but was soft and warm at the same time. It was also very tactile. It felt like my body was ungodly euphoric and warm. My body felt like if I were to touch any part of me I would explode into a million fireworks of uplifting joyful sensations. The overall peak of my inner self being bound and tied by the psychedelic dominatrix goddess entity of miprocin, 4-HO-MiPT, lasted about 2.5 hours. After about 3 hours I was pretty settled down and able to move and function again. I was still pretty silly in the head and warm for another couple hours after coming off the last peak but nothing quite profound during that time. Once I came down from the silly headspace and the warm body high that lingered after such a peak, I was able to go to sleep pretty easily and woke up feeling completely fine with no hangover or anything.